No Chill Sports is an unapologetic, high-energy sports show where opinions fly fast and facts hit hard. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the hosts and guests, and do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated networks, sponsors, or partners. Content may include passionate debates, bold predictions, and unfiltered takes that some viewers may find intense or controversial. Listener discretion is advised. If you're looking for chill, this ain't the place.
Before we begin, we'd like to give a shout out to our sponsors over at W. W is a powdered energy drink aimed at gamers and individuals seeking focus and energy. It's known for its clean ingredients, no jitters, and various flavors. W is also available in a hydration formula for those needing electrolytes. W achieves its smooth, effective focus with a high end tasting experience while using no sugars, no fillers, no artificial colors or dyes. Try W today by scanning the QR code on screen or visit them at the website bit.ly/no chill W. W, your taste buds' favorite energy drink. On today's episode, we talked to Emery Hunt, founder of Football Game Plan, analyst of CBS Sports HQ and Sportsline, and also a college football color analyst. Emery joins us today to talk about the NFL draft and some of his expectations. Today is also Emery's birthday. Happy birthday to the czar of the playbook.
All right, we are live. Well, not really, but we are here with our good man Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Thank you for joining us, Emery. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, man. I appreciate y'all bringing me on the show.
All right. You know what's funny? You've been on the Golden Boot when we were the Golden Boot. You are our very first guest on No Chill Sports.
What? Get out of
Rant
here, man.
with Pough Ant. You are our very first guest. So
I appreciate that, man. I feel now I got to bring my A game.
Yeah. All right. Wanted to bring you on. We were going through the rebrand, so we didn't get a chance to talk to you before the draft. But the draft is over. Teams have started OTAs, mini camps, and well, at least rookie mini camps. And wanted to kind of talk to you about this draft class and some of your thoughts on it. And I'm gonna jump right to it. The Shedeur dilemma, the Shedeur drama. We saw 4 rounds of, he's going to be taken. He's going to be taken. He didn't. We saw a lot of quarterbacks go before him. Honestly, in my opinion, there's probably maybe one that's questionably better than him. Your thoughts on that how that whole thing just played out?
You know what's funny, man? I was ahead of the curve on the drop. Friday morning, so I'll say this. I'll walk you through different things. So Friday morning, I'm down at CBS Sports, our Fort Lauderdale studios. So obviously we watched Thursday night just go by. Then we saw the Giants trade. Okay, maybe they're going to get Shedeur. Then Jackson Dart pop up. So Friday morning, I'm on the morning buzz, which is like a 9 o'clock, 8 to 10 o'clock type show with Brandon Baylor and Zach Aldridge. They do a fantastic job. So I'm on that show. It's like 9 o'clock. And they're asking me, obviously, takeaways from day one. And I said, we got to Shedeur. Obviously, that was the story of the night. And I was like, well, listen, this has it's like this has more to do about Dion than it does about Shador. I said it wouldn't shock me to see Shador go undrafted. And it was like, what? What? No, no, no. You mean undrafted on day 2? Or I was like, undrafted. I was like, think about this. We are coming off of the Bronny James LeBron situation where LeBron. I mean, even if somebody didn't, whether or not you thought Bronny James was an NBA player or not, didn't matter. It was if you thought he was a decent player or thought he could help sales, you would have drafted him, right? Because that's just good business. But no one drafted this kid for 2 rounds until the Lakers, and it was kind of understood that he was going to go to the Lakers. Nobody touched him except the Lakers. And then you have the Nico Iamaleava situation we were just coming off of, where playoff quarterback at a Power 4 program decides to sit out spring ball and can transfer. And it's like, so what the NFL doesn't want is an NBA situation. They do not want to become the NBA where the players run the league. So now you have those 2 things. You have a high profile coach in Deion Sanders who was boisterous in saying he can kind of dictate where he wants him to go. Now, this draft alone had over 14 to 15 former NFL players' sons in this draft class. So there was a bunch of Moose Muhammad, Jordan Bly, Bruner, all kind of Mason Taylor. So there's all kind of former NFL players' sons that was in this draft class. And so but there was, one quarterback. So imagine if there's other quarterbacks that are former NFL sons or even high-profile players coming down the pike, and they decide, nah, I want my son to play for this organization or that organization. Now you have anarchy, right? So the league is like, if college football is not going to do anything to stop this NIL boom that we have guys just bouncing around and holding out for more money, we have to step up and take a stance. And who is the perfect, person to make an example out of than Shador Sanders, and also really targeting Deion Sanders. So that was my whole elongated thought process of why he could probably go undrafted. So that's why you saw him fall to the 5th round. And so it was funny because I was jeered and laughed at and kind of thought to be a conspiracy theorist that early in the morning. But then by Saturday morning, when he didn't go on Friday night, everybody started picking up like, man, maybe this isn't good. I like, but y'all believe that nobody landed on the moon. Y'all sit there and believe that any national tragedy was an inside job. Y'all sit there and believe certain things cause certain things. But this was a bridge too far when this was clearly obvious that they was making an example of this dude. This you can't believe, right? So, and I said we've seen this before. We saw this with, Colin Kaepernick. We saw it with Tebow. We saw it with Michael Sam. We saw it with Kerry Rose. Nobody brings him up. You know what I'm saying? So we've seen this type of thing happen before where an example is going to be made. And so him going to the 5th round, and then what I really hated was how folks tried to justify, his tape wasn't that good. Like, not one person in any media space had this dude as either QB3. Some may had him 1, some may had him 2, but no one had him anything outside of that. No one had him falling out the top 40. So anybody that tells you 5th round they could have seen this coming or 3rd round, gaslighting you and lying to you. So him going to the 5th round, whatever. The Browns is a great spot for him. And I actually thought and I said this Saturday when he got drafted or Sunday after the draft, like, man, if you just switch the Shador pick with pick 33 and look at the Browns draft, you're like, yo, they killed this. Like, they drafted really well. And if you just swap Shador at the 2nd round as opposed to the 5th round, because I don't mind them taking 2 quarterbacks because, they don't have young quarterbacks on the roster. Deshaun is out for the year with the Achilles again. Flacco is 40. He's just a placeholder. They got Pickett in there. So you really could have used 2 young rookie quarterbacks. And I think this is a spot where he can compete for the starting job and will win this starting job. So I didn't care that he went in the 5th round. 1, you can't take money from him because he's already paid. And then 2, this is a good spot for him to go out there and compete. Actually fits what Kevin Stefanski does well offensively. So it worked out for him, but it wasn't. He didn't fall because of his talent.
Yeah. You said you think Cleveland a good spot for him. Of all the rookie quarterbacks, you got Cam Ward in Tennessee, Jackson Dart in New York, Tyler Shuck in New Orleans, and then then Shador in Cleveland. Who do you think is in the best situation? Who do you think is going to be most successful their rookie season?
I think both. If Shador gets to start, he'll have success because all we've seen him do is win and overcome adversity. But Cam has a great setup around him. They not only did they draft Cam Ward, but they drafted 2 good receivers. They also added as an undrafted free agent Xavier Estrepo. They got a stable of good backs. They rebuilt this offensive line, and they've added some pieces on defense. And Cam Ward is a floor raiser. So he went to Incarnate Word, had those Zoos in the playoffs. We saw him go to Washington State, elevated those guys, made them relevant, and had them playing competitive football. And we saw him have Miami on the precipice of the postseason if they just had a bottom third defense and not one of the worst defenses, right? If they could just get 2 stops a game, they go to the postseason. So Cam is in a good spot because Tennessee wasn't as bad as the record indicated. They were in the mix for the AFC South title last year because that division was up in the air. And then we know that they were like 6 plays away from winning 3 games. And a lot of those 6 plays, maybe 5 of the 6 plays, were attributed to Will Levis. You know what I'm saying? So if you take away those bonehead plays, they win 3 games. They win the AFC South. They're in the postseason, and he probably doesn't even go number 1 overall to the Tennessee Titans, and they won't have the number 1 overall pick. So I would say Ward is in a good spot. Dart is in a decent spot because of he doesn't have to play. I think Cam is ready to play. Shador is ready to play. Dart needs to sit, and he's going to get that benefit and that luxury because he has 2 capable starters in front of him in Winston and also Russell Wilson. So I think if I had to rank them, it would be Cam, Shador, Ty for 1, then Dart, and then Shuck.
Never trust a man who puts mayonnaise in anything other than a sandwich. Your process. When you're making your draft guide, a lot of times we'll see your evals and necessarily how the draft shake out aren't necessarily aligned. I will say I will give you a lot of credit because a lot of people come for you because of that reason. But your track record is really good, and one of my favorite activities is seeing people try to call you out and you point out you pull out those receipts. But tell me this: what is it about kind of the evals versus the draft outcomes? What is kind of your process?
Man, that's a great question, right? Because there's levels to this, and we see this kind of discourse go on right now in the NBA, in the WNBA. Like, my thing is this. My job is my title. I call myself a football analyst because CBS. I do college football, NFL, CFL, UFL, the draft. So I'm an analyst. So my job is to watch film, analyze, and give my thoughts and opinions. Now, when we're talking draft, I said this before. I think there's a tweet out there. It probably is, where you have to really understand your role. Are you a draft reporter, which is like, hey, this team is thinking about trading for this or this, these players' pro days are here. Here's what they ran. That's a reporter. You're just taking the information and giving it to the people. Are you a draft scout where you're actively at games all throughout the season or even at regular season games while also at all-star games, right? Are you a draft analyst to where you're breaking down prospects and you may not go to all-star events or games? Sometimes the scout and in the media space, the scout and the analyst can be the same thing. Are you a mock drafter where you're just pumping out mock drafts and trying to gauge, okay, I think this guy is going here because I've seen a lot of mock drafts, so I'm going to change a few guys and put them here. And then when a guy goes in round one, you can't say, "Oh, I told you he was going to go in round one." Well, okay, cool, but are you a mock drafter? What's your grade on a guy? Is he a first round talent? And so I think a lot of times people get the four roles confused because you may have guys that all you see is them pumping out mock drafts, and you don't see them evaluate talent with scouting reports. You don't see them at games, you know, or you get some people that they do one or the other. They'll pump out like pro day numbers, and people confuse them with as covering the draft. Like, yeah, so for me, it's like I'm a scout analyst where you'll see me at games. I call games. I'm at all the all-star games, and I also break down film. So my whole thing is making sure my eval is right because I don't care where they go, as long as when they play, does it check the box? So you may even see me, for those that are listening that may follow me on Twitter as well, you may see me watch a UFL game or a CFL game and somebody stands out or somebody does something, and I'll quote tweet it with my scouting report. So you're seeing what I thought of the kid coming out of college, and he's playing in a different league, but is this right? Is this wrong?
Mhm.
Or you may see, let's say, case in point last year, how many guys that covered a draft, or draft analysts or draft scouts, had a scouting report on the Saints' Mason Tipton, the wide receiver out of Yale, who was called up midseason, who was starting in the preseason, but then called up midseason, start a game. I want to say it was the Green Bay game he started, and people are like, "Who the hell this receiver is from Yale?" Bang! Here's my scouting report on this receiver from Yale. He didn't have to get drafted, but he out there starting, right? So you know what I'm saying? So that's my role, and I kind of do a good job of blocking out the noise. I always joke around and say, like, if I hear a name in the summer or early in the season that everybody on Twitter talking about, the guy probably is not that good. Kind of like how they had Connor Wegman as QB1. And I'm like, man, I didn't watch some A&M games. Like, what are they talking about? Is it like, and then you start to think, like, when you allow the noise, like, let me see if I'm tripping. And then you watch the game, you're like, bro, what is everybody talking about? So you just dismiss it, right? So you block out the noise, and then you just do your own thing and let the chips fall where they may. Also, some people, and this ties to the point too, you got to willing to be right and also wrong in the same plane.
Mhm.
So if I was right, if I say I was right about Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes having 1A, 1B grades, I gotta also I had Deshaun Kaiser as my QB3 with a first round grade. That's a miss. But those two hits are home runs. I'm willing to take this strikeout if I hit 2 home runs. I'm up 2-0, right? So you got it. Some people are quick to concede a loss when you see, right? Oh man, I was wrong about Shador. I don't know what I saw. Like, bro, no games have been played yet. You're not wrong or right yet. So let the games be played. If he plays terrible, then you can say I was wrong about Shador. And so even just more recent, 2 years ago, I did the eval of the running backs, and I had Jahmyr Gibbs my RB1. You think I'd call Bijan Robinson like everything from the child of God, bro, and he was my RB2. And everybody was like, I need to change my process. Doing this for clickbait. He's one of the worst ones out there. He said this, he said that. By week 6, everybody's like, man, Jahmyr Gibbs, like, and so I just sat back and just let people, and now everybody's talking about Jahmyr Gibbs as they always had him as a great guy, right? But it's like, so that's the type of stuff. So I consider myself a draft scout analyst or evaluator, put it that way. But people get the roles conflated because I can do multiple roles. Because again, I'm not a reporter, although I could. I'm a color analyst. I cover different leagues, so I have and I also am at Giants training camps, mini camps, and things of that. So I got boots on the ground all the time, so I can color and I can drive in many different lanes. And so some people can only drive in one, but then they try to swerve in mine, and that's when things get bad for them because everybody wants to play like everybody, talk about being a Bentley until Bentley shows up. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's not to toot my own home, but it's just showing like there's levels to this.
Yeah.
I hope that answered your question. I know I rambled.
It really did. It really did.
Because I feel like there's different roles. Like, the reason why I brought up the NFL and NBA and WNBA, because some people say, well, you had to have played to be able to talk about it. Like, the person asks you the question that you're mad at, that's the reporter. The reporter doesn't have to play. If you're talking about analysts, the analyst usually has playing experience at whatever level. But the reporter's job is to take what you say, ask questions, take what you say, then report it, print it, whatever, right? But some people try to color in different roles, and I think sometimes people don't understand what a role is. Some people didn't know there was a difference between a play-by-play and a color analyst. All of that was one and the same. It was like, nah, that's two different roles. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I had to make that designation.
Yeah. So when you talk about how your board might not necessarily align with how the draft actually plays out, a lot of that has to do with teams wanting certain type of fit. They might want a cover 3 corner instead of a man corner, or they might want an inside receiver versus an outside receiver, whatever the case may be. What are some guys you think had the best fit, for their skill set to the team that they went to? Maybe not necessarily where they got drafted, but they went to a good situation.
That's another great question. I feel like, we tend to nail these type things a lot, right? Where I go back to Najee Harris's draft year. Like in September, when he's still at Alabama, I think we all kind of said, oh man, he looked like a Steeler. And then lo and behold, he gets drafted by Pittsburgh, right? So that's an example of that. But this year, in this year's class, when you think about, okay, who's a great fit for what they do and kind of exemplifies their MO. When you look at a team like Chicago and getting a Luther Burden, you're like, man, that's a really good fit. He could play inside. You think about what they had in draft last year in Rome Odunze. They don't have Keenan Allen anymore, but they got DJ Moore. Okay, well, if you're gonna bring in another receiver, then who you're gonna bring in? Like, oh, okay, well, yeah, let's bring in this guy that can play inside in the slot. That may be where the Keenan Allen role, and he can kind of play that role. Boom. You think about Josh Connerly, the offensive tackle for Washington, the Commanders, coming out of Oregon. He played left tackle. They're gonna move him to right tackle, plug him in there, right tackle, because they bring in Laramie Tunsil already. And some people was like, well, what is that? Why would you play him at right tackle if he's like, one, when you look at his scout report, he's athletic, he has great feet, he can move. So when you're dealing with a mobile quarterback, you better have a tackle that's going to be able to block and entertain and mirror and match for at least 4 or 5 seconds. So that dude behind him, you don't know where he's going to be. So you better have somebody that can kind of go where the D lineman goes, right? And it allows them to kick their current right tackle down inside to guard where he actually thrives better. And now you just solidified your offensive line. So like, wow, that's a fantastic fit right there. So those two really just jump out at me as an example of how you can mesh fit with the prospect, no matter where they went in the draft or whatnot. So you may get a guy in rounds 2 or 3 that you kind of say, oh wow, that clearly looks like that type of team gets that type of player. And Dallas too. One thing I'll say about Jerry Jones, and nobody gives him credit, he knows how to draft. And you think about the guys he got: Shuvon Ravel, Jaden Blue, like they get talent. He's like, man, they really knocking it out the park. And so I thought they had one of those drafts as well.
Real quick, Pough.
Go ahead.
One name you ain't mentioned, but I think kind of fits that same mold of they went to a perfect team, is the guy a lot of people had one of the top 2-3 guys in the draft in terms of talent, Ashton Genty. I think going with Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll, who going to run the football, you get a guy who could be a workhorse back. I think that kind of fits. What do you think he can kind of do in Vegas with that fit?
Well, you like that Vegas brought in a quarterback in Geno Smith. They got a great tight end in Brock Bowers. And so they I thought they could have gone receiver at pick 6 or running back. I probably would have leaned more receiver wise, but they ended up getting some guys later or whatnot. But him as a runner, you got to give him props for his ability to break tackles. He's not elusive, but he's good at breaking tackles. You know what I'm saying? That's another thing people conflate with, being the same thing. There's a difference between elusiveness and break tackles. Adrian Peterson broke tackles. Barry Sanders was elusive. You know what I'm saying? That's two different skill sets. But, and for a guy that's, 5'9", 215, that's why when I compared him during the season, early, I want to say maybe like September, I compared his style to Emmitt Smith. I grew up in an era where we're watching Emmitt Smith, Barry, and that's all we talked about in high school was like, who's better, right? Arguing back for who's better, right? Because you got to see what made Barry, like, oh, I could see that. Like, you never understood what made Emmitt Smith good because he was like, I just don't get it. Like, he just getting yards and it's not flashy. He's not the fastest. He's not elusive. But at the end of the day, he got like 135 yards. You're like, man, I don't know. And then when he retired, you're like, how did he get 18,000 yards? Like, I don't remember none of them yards. You know what I'm saying? So that's Genty. And I think that's a skill in and of itself to be that level consistent week in, week out, year in, year out. And so he at least helps set the table for their run game, which will then open things up, them throwing the football.
All right. You mentioned earlier about people need to stay in their lane and stuff. So there's a lane that you sit in, that you reside in, that I only know 3 people, 1, 2, 3, who cover it very well. And the other 2, you're one, Zach McKinnell, and then Gerald Huggins. I'm sorry, Gerald Huggins the second. And that is the FCS. We've seen the FCS, the kind of decline in how guys are drafted from the FCS, unless, like the 2 quarterbacks we've talked about the most, transfer to FBS. Who's someone in FCS that stayed FCS that got drafted that you think is going to be is going to shock some people?
It's fascinating. Those 2 my guys too, Zach and Gerald. Like, Gerald do great work at Morgan State, also scouting. Zach does a great job covering the FCS, the Blue Bloods. So both of those are my guys. But coming from the FCS, staying FCS, you talk about in this draft class?
Yes.
David Walker out of Central Arkansas. It's funny because when you watch him rush the passer, if you'd have told me he was 6'4", 250, I would have believed you because he looks like that on tape. Like, and then you get down to the Senior Bowl, you see he's like 6'1", 260. You're like, damn. Like, he really was killing it because he's undersized, and then he goes out to the Senior Bowl and kills it there too. I think that's somebody that's going to really just hit the ground running because now we've seen guys his size really have success. And also I would throw out there Charles Grant, the offensive lineman out of William & Mary. Coach Mike London does a phenomenal job of recruiting, cultivating, developing talent. He was an NFL coach with the Cowboys, I believe, won a national championship as the head coach at Richmond. So he knows what good talent looks like. And he had a great one in Charles Grant, who went out there, athletic build, phenomenal footwork, can get out on the move. You could use him in the screen game in terms of like him getting out on the perimeter and blocking with ease. And this is someone that would have dominated the All-Star game circuit had he been healthy enough to play. And Greg Zabel obviously was another one that we kind of all pegged as him going to Seattle, I believe, right?
I think so.
So that looks like that type of player, and he went there. So dominant. What stood out for me about him was the fact that he went through a full 16-game season, national championship season at North Dakota State, then participates and plays the whole week at the Senior Bowl, dominate the whole week. Like he had every right. Like the Ohio State players, like, oh, we had a long season, we'll take this. No, he went out there and just went through the whole week, dominated, played in the game, and so those three guys from the FCS jump out of my head immediately as those that really stood out.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw one more at you just because I don't want the people in Norman, Alabama, to be hitting you up. Carson Vincent out of Alabama A&M. That's a name that seemed to, I'm not gonna say skyrocket, but it seemed to climb on the boards, especially after Senior Bowl.
Right.
I think he and I know Ant just asked about the fit. I think going to the Ravens was a good move as well, because I think that's somewhere where he'll at least get a chance. And I got a chance to watch him play, and the kid's phenomenal.
Yeah, he had a fantastic week at the Senior Bowl, and that's an example of, that's why. And it's one thing about my process that's unique, because I don't cover the draft all year round. My draft process starts at the All-Star game circuit once my college football season ends in terms of me calling games. So the first All-Star game I go, second All-Star game, because the first one I usually go to in May up in Canada, which is how I got ahead of the curve on those Canadian prospects. But the second one, the first one in the States, happens the first week of December, the FCS Bowl, which is in Daytona Beach, right? So I go down there, and that's when I start locking in on draft prospects. And there's a gift and a curse. And I kind of had to, when I was coming up in terms of like in the industry before I got with CBS, it was like I'm doing a lot of different things. And if I'm at the Senior Bowl or All-Star game, I'm allowing that to influence me because I saw it live, right? And then you kind of I could see how you can get influenced by what you saw at an All-Star game setting and kind of use that as the evaluation. Because, hey, I saw it live. This is what I saw. Boom, next. But, and said I'd like to say about Vincent, I seen the Auburn game. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
I didn't get influenced by that strong week of practice.
Yeah,
at the Senior Bowl, there was a lot of work to be done in that Auburn game, but that gave you the balance of
right.
Okay, you go back and watch the film. This is what he looked like early in the season. This is what he looked like this week. Consistently going up against some of the top rushers in the country, which gives you a different look than what you saw in the Auburn game. Okay, he got better. He was able to hold his own to the point where they were calling him out post practice to go one-on-one. If he won the rep, the defense had to do push-ups. And so you like that he stood on, business there and did his thing and improved. And going to Baltimore where he won't have to play right away is going to be great for him because he can now get the proper nutrition, strength and conditioning, because that's the one element people forget about the small school guys. Not even at the G5 level, not every strength and conditioning and nutrition program is the same. And especially not the case at the FCS level. Like these dudes now as pros, that's why I always love taking chances on those small school guys. Like, wait a minute, this dude dominated this level of competition, played really well, and now he gets to not have to worry about where he's going to eat and work out in a great. Oh man, give me that dude. Like we can put weight on him, we can put a good weight on him, we can give him food. Like and once he doesn't have to worry about that, then his talent really is going to shoot up. You know what I'm saying? Because at the power forward level, you're getting that already, which is why you see these guys tend to come out as more finished product. So I think him going to Baltimore, I agree with you, is a great spot for him because he won't be thrust into action early. He'll get to take a full season to get acclimated to pro strength and conditioning and nutrition. So when he does get out there, he'll be a monster.
Sticking with the offensive line, well, the trenches overall, a lot of fan bases, mine included, the Saints, tend to hate whenever their teams draft guys in the trenches. The skill positions, the quarterbacks, those are the sexy names during draft time. But a lot of teams who went far last season built their teams in the trenches. The Eagles, the Lions, for example. So which team do you think did the best job of fortifying their interior, or either on offense or defense? What's the guy who went to a team that you think is going to surprise some people next year and maybe potential defensive or rookie of the year type guy on the defensive line?
Well, I'll give you an offensive, defensive.
Okay.
Offensive, let's stick with New Orleans. Banks is a good fit because Banks could play guard or tackle, and it allows you now the security to know, okay, you have Fuaga on one side, and you have Banks on the other side, or if you want to, whichever way. But if Penning proves to be better, then you could leave him at tackle and then put Banks inside at guard. Or if you don't even want to wait and see if he can get better there, and he may be a Robert Gallery where he actually probably is best suited, talk about Penning, to play guard as opposed to playing tackle, and he could go and salvage his career as a starting guard for New Orleans while Banks is striving at tackle. I thought that was a great pick because people forget how dire a situation the Saints offensive line was when Ramczyk got injured and had to retire. So that threw off the whole thing. And so now Banks is a very good player, and I think that's going to help them out. I would say Philly improved their offensive line. And what Philly does is so smart. They always draft a year ahead. So they drafted Cameron Williams, who is my number 2 offensive tackle out of Texas. I thought he was phenomenal on tape. As an undrafted rookie free agent, they signed Holland Pierce, the 6'8" offensive lineman out of Rutgers, who was phenomenal at Rutgers and also had a really good week at the East-West Shrine Bowl. So you got 2 tackles. Guys are getting up there in age. So when you see Lane Johnson retire and Williams steps in or Pierce steps, you're like, oh, wow, they got an answer already. Well, that's how you do it. And I think on defense, I love what Minnesota did. I know Minnesota added a lot of depth pieces, but one guy that's a HBCU guy that's an undrafted guy that they signed that I was really big fan of. That's gonna they give small school guys a chance. We saw that last year when they drafted Levy Drake Rodriguez out of Texas A&M Commerce, which is now East Texas A&M. Elijah Williams out of Morgan State. Now I called his whole career at first his whole career at home, right? Because I do a lot of home games at Morgan State, and he broke the sack record. This dude could play from the 9 technique all the way down to the nose, and it's crazy how consistently dominant he was. It was like a guy that had a great sense of timing. So if they needed a play to be made, he made the play, and that's the type of impact you want. So, and Minnesota has a deep, talented roster. The way they drafted on both sides of the ball, but in particular on defense, a lot of what they are hoping for this year is that JJ McCarthy is decent. Because if he's decent, doesn't turn the ball over, can hit the plays, can he play like he played at Michigan, right? Is real safe, efficient, game manager type. This team should be in the playoffs again because they are talented on both sides of the ball, and they are another one that has figured out how to draft well, but also secure some really good undrafted free agents as well.
Yeah. Go ahead and now close us out after your next question.
All right, my last one for you. It seems like every year there's certain teams who just find a way to nail the draft. The Eagles come to mind, Ravens come to mind. Some teams who just perennial good drafting teams and organizations. Who won the draft to you this year of all the teams?
This is not a cop-out. I truly believe, and I said this on the Sunday after the draft, everybody drafted well. And it was wild to see, like, damn, this was, you mean disagree with a pick or two that, like, I didn't particularly agree with the Shuck pick or the Dart pick, but I understand it because of the situation that makes sense. So in that sense, like, okay, he doesn't have to play right now. You could win games while developing a quarterback. That's ideal. That's ideally what you want as a coach in an organization. So you can't really hate on that pick. You understand it from a philosophical perspective. But I think the reason why I felt like everybody, because as I'm going through comparing who drafted what, who signed guys as undrafted free agents, and you're looking at the numbers, I'm like, damn, like these are good players. And, because I grade a lot, so I have a lot to really compare. But I feel like the reason why I feel like everybody had a great draft was maybe this is the last year of the COVID players, right? Yeah. So we had so many players in this draft class. Like, this is the largest draft guide I put out. And every year I break my record, but this year I had over 1,200 scout reports in there. And so that's a lot of prospects, you know what I'm saying? And that I just physically graded. So you could tell that there's even more out there, right? So maybe because we saw the last of these 5th and 6th year guys, that's why we saw a lot, right? And so I don't know what that number is going to look like next year, but I felt like everybody kind of got good talent across the board that's going to help their team in some way. There was no one team that I saw that was like, geez, they ain't getting nobody. Like, this is terrible. Like, you know, it was all solid, good drafts with good players. Now, whether you can't keep everybody, but it's just like, dang, these are everybody did really well. Patriots did well. Like, it's just you look around, you was like, man, there was no team that really stood out that said, yeesh, they didn't do too well. But everybody, I thought this year, maybe it's the last year of the large class that we got, that kind of contributed to that.
Well, Emery, thank you again for coming on and chopping it up with us. But I can't let you just go without asking just something non-football or non-related. So let me ask this. When the czar is not grading and recruiting, or I'm sorry, grading and evaluating talent, what is your guilty pleasure?
Good question. Like, obviously I'm a music head, so I still have it's funny, I got hit up on, I was flying to one of these all-star games, and a steward, it was a male steward. It was like, he walked past, he saw my iPod, he was like, bro, he was like, I was like, dude, the only reason, he said, man, I ain't see what, I was like, bro, the only reason why I'm using this because I got all my music on here, because there's no more iTunes,
right?
So the iPhone didn't pick up a lot of the stuff that I had on iTunes that carried over. So all my old New Orleans stuff, like UNLV, PMW, all that stuff is still on. So I gotta keep this around, right? It has all my music on it. So I love listening to music of any, jazz. Now that I'm older, I like just mellow, because the new rap suck now. They don't even sing no more either. So new R&B suck. So it's R&B and rap from my era that I listen to in abundance, and listen to jazz now. But I also I'll binge watch like a couple of shows, right? I'll binge watch like Law and Order, any of them. I don't care if it's Law and Order, SVU, Law and Order, Baton Rouge, whatever. Like, I'm watching it all, right? I love Law and Order, right? Dick Wolf does a great job. And American Greed always captivates me too. Like, because it's like, man, like, because I feel like philosophically you got to be greedy yourself in order to get got. You know what I'm saying? Because when you hear some of these stories, you're like, man, you had it already set, but you wanted more. Now you just left yourself vulnerable for this guy that came and took advantage of you, right? And then I also watch a lot of Dateline on OWN, or 2020 on OWN, those crime mystery shows.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I'll watch old TV shows like Martin, Wayne's Brothers, Jamie Foxx, get my mom stuff, and cartoons, older cartoons. Like, even the new cartoons nowadays suck, but it's like older cartoons. Watch something mindless just to get yourself off through,
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again for coming on. The Good Wife. I've actually started watching that, and I've been hooked. So I don't know. It's a long story how that happened, but yeah.
Hey, listen, sometimes it be the shows that you like. I had never watched a Law and Order until like 2008. I remember I had sat down and watched one. It was, and you know how it is, like, you hook before the intro come on. So it's like the 2 minutes in, I'm like, oh wow. And then the intro come on, and then you're like, well, I gotta see how this finished. Next thing you know, it's an hour later. The next thing you know, you done watch 7 episodes in a row. It's like, dang, like these things. So I get it. It happens.
Yeah. Speaking of that, shout out to The Wire, 23rd anniversary, greatest show HBO ever produced. I'll fight people on that. Get out for that Game of Thrones. Anyway, thank you again for coming on. Truly a pleasure to have you on, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Appreciate y'all. Thanks for having me. I love seeing y'all do great work, man. The rebrand is awesome, and I always love jumping on.
Appreciate it, man.